Hi, and welcome to the Chairman's Circle. I'm Fulton County Commission Chairman Rob Pitts. I'm pleased to bring this program to you where we will meet interesting people, talk about interesting and important issues, and give you a chance to weigh in on social media. Today's topic, medicinal cannabis. We'll talk about opioids, crack, and even heroin, and how lawmakers are tackling this issue. Dr. Rashawn Hodge will join me in the Chairman's Circle next. Today we're talking about what is commonly referred to as medicinal marijuana and why it's become such a hot topic, hot button issue for lawmakers all across the country, including right here in Georgia. Dr. Hodge, a close friend, is a strong advocate for the legalization and cultivation of medicinal cannabis right here in Georgia, and he was actually involved in writing the law. Welcome, my good friend, Dr. Rashawn Hodge.
Thanks
good
for
to have you,
having
buddy.
me.
Okay, we got a lot to cover. So tell me, what got you involved in this topic, this area in the first place?
With medicinal cannabis?
Yes.
Well, I broke my neck in 2012.
How did that happen?
It was a simple basketball accident. I ran into a guy's chest. Had no business being on the court. Ran into his chest with my head down.
So his chest was stronger than your head?
It was. It was stronger than my neck.
Got it. Okay.
And from that accident, obviously I had to have plates and screws in my neck, and it left me with intractable pain. That's pain that just doesn't go away. You know, there's no feel better for me, and there's no feel better for almost 100 million Americans.
So from that, what happened? What was next? From your medical practice point of view.
Suffering with this chronic pain, I went through 2 cervical spine surgeries with just the inkling of hope that I would feel better. Unfortunately, I did not. So the very medications that I used to prescribe, I had to take, and those are opioids and benzos, and they poorly addressed my pain. I still suffered. So that's when I said, you know what, let me try this medicinal cannabis. 30 states have already figured out the answer to chronic pain.
Well, how do you get it if it's illegal?
There's websites you can get the medication in, but you know, there's no
still
lab
illegal.
testing. It's illegal to bring it across state line. Now, as of 2015, we're an oil-only state, so it's low THC.
What does that mean, an oil-only state?
We're allowed to use medicinal cannabis. It's called Haley's Hope. So in 2015, we passed Haley's Hope. It was based off a young girl who was having 400 seizures a day. Her mom risked becoming a medical marijuana refugee. A lot of Georgians are leaving our great state so they can seek this treatment, life-saving treatment. So she contacted Alan Peake, and Alan Peake and 7 others passed the Haley's Hope Act, which allows Georgians to carry 20 ounces of low THC oil, less than 5% THC, the rest is CBD.
But how do they get it if it's illegal and you can't transport it across state lines?
And that's the problem. There's no access, Commissioner. So we have this bill where it protects you from, you know, as a caretaker or a patient, you're allowed to carry 20 ounces or administer 20 ounces to loved ones or to your kids.
Does it work?
It absolutely works. It's my glue. I live in pain. I work at a pain clinic. I'm the medical director of a pain clinic, and that has helped me with my pain. It's helped me with my depression, my anxiety. It's helped me gain weight. It's helped me thrive.
So how did you get involved with Representative Peake?
Well, I felt like it was my duty to use all my credentials as a physician, as a man, as a father, to help others to find relief with medicinal cannabis. It's just my duty to do that because I found relief, and there's 100 million Americans that are suffering with chronic pain. And with chronic pain, there's a feeling of helplessness and hopelessness. And that's the worst punishment known to man. It's inhuman. You know, you feel so alone, and I just can't have others, especially Georgians, other Americans going through this by themselves, because I know personally how it affects your life.
So when your patients come to you, I mean, what do they tell you? Well, I need this, or you prescribe this, or you diagnose them. What's the process?
Yeah. Okay, so every physician has the opportunity to sign up for this program. So, you know, you sign up through the Department of Public Health and the Medical Board of Georgia.
And you've obviously signed up.
Yeah,
How many physicians are, you know?
When I started, it was roughly 350 physicians that are trying to take care of 11 million, Georgians, right? How many Georgians are there?
Yeah, about 11, it's statewide, I mean, people, yeah, but everybody doesn't have it, so.
Yeah.
But there's a huge number
There's a
of folks
huge
who-
demand
yeah.
for it. So there's about 350 physicians now that are qualifying patients for medicinal cannabis. Now, we can't make prescriptions because it's still a Schedule I drug. So it's federally illegal, so therefore we only make recommendations.
See, that's what people don't understand. It's on a national level, it's illegal. It's illegal to transport it from one state to another state, yet physicians like you are prescribing it. There's a need for it here. Parents are crying out for their kids in particular to have it.
Right.
So it seems to me like a huge dilemma that you're faced with.
It is.
Whether it's moral, ethical, I don't know what the right word is, but it's a problem.
It's a big
Yeah.
problem because this Controlled Substance Act is archaic. It was 1970, right? We said, hey man, cannabis is just like heroin. Cannabis is just like cocaine. It's a Schedule I drug. Now, with all the evidence and all the research, we know that that's not true.
What do you mean?
Well, one, it improves pain. The National Academy, there's been some great studies that disprove that cannabis is deadly as cocaine and heroin. It's just not true. You know, it's not a gateway to those drugs. It's an exit to the opioid
Well, that's
epidemic.
important because those who are opposed to it always say that if you start with this, you're going to end up over here. And you're saying that's not true.
That's not, it's not
Medically,
true at all.
scientifically, that's
Medically,
not true.
scientifically, we collected data from 1999 to 2011. States that have a medicinal cannabis program, there's a 25% reduction in opioid-related deaths. So as we speak, you and I are talking, 91 Americans are dying from opioid-related deaths, overdoses, 91 a day.
And here
Yeah.
in Georgia, that's also true.
Oh, people are dying in Georgia. That's also true. So 91 Americans are dying every day from opioid-related overdoses. Now, 40% of those deaths are attached to a prescription. The other 60% is illicit opioids like heroin and fentanyl.
Okay, I want to spend some time talking with you about the opioids as well. But tell me how this works, because you do a lot of work with hospice care as well.
Yes. Well, all hospice patients as of last year are able to receive medicinal cannabis. So that's on our bill. They're eligible for medicinal cannabis. So medical cannabis I can make recommendations for a 1 hour-old infant to a 110-year-old man or woman that's taking their last breath. Cannabis can comfort you through the whole process of death and dying.
This is unbelievable.
It is.
So,
that's the truth.
What's the problem at the state when you have stories like you and physicians like you and professionals coming forward, families bringing in children who are
Right.
aching, in pain? How can they say no?
Well, one, it's
I
very
mean, it has to be
illegal.
frustrating.
It's very, very frustrating. Again, we live in the Bible Belt. There's a lot of religious groups that are opposing this, but 90% of Georgians agree with medicinal cannabis. So the problem, the crux of the problem is access. So currently, right now, we have 3 bills that can promise cultivation of medical marijuana for medicinal purposes only.
Hold that point. We're going to stop for a minute. And I
Okay.
want to talk about those 3 bills, then we're going to transition into opioids.
Okay.
All right, let's take a quick break and more with Dr. Rashawn Hodge when we come back. All right, we're talking about medicinal cannabis with Dr. Rashawn Hodge. So we're going to talk about a couple of bills that are being currently debated at the Georgia legislature.
Yes, yes. One is House Bill 645, and that's to start in-state cultivation of medical marijuana for
Is that
medicinal
Representative
purposes
Peake
only.
also?
It was written by Representative Alan Peake.
Okay. And what does it do?
It's gonna, it illustrates outlines that we need to start cultivating medical marijuana so we can have access. Right now we have this bill where you're allowed to carry the oil, but you kept on asking me, where do you get it? Where do you get it? Where do you get it?
I'm still asking
I was
that.
reluctant to tell you.
Yeah, well, tell me.
Because
people want to know.
It's through the underground is where you're getting it.
Illegally. So if you get caught with it, even though you may have a prescription from Dr. Hodge,
no,
if
you get caught with it,
Yeah.
you're not caught with it because you're gonna obtain or purchase something that's less than 20 ounces. So you're gonna have a medicinal cannabis card, and you're gonna have to reach out to the underground and grab your medicine.
So you mentioned a card. You have a card?
I'm a card holder, yes.
Where's your card?
It's downstairs because I lost it at Vital Records. So
Okay,
so it's downstairs. I had to reprint it.
Okay.
My card is for peripheral neuropathy. That's for any pain that radiates. So, when I was making recommendations for the state, I got this question, hey doc, do you take it? And I had to, I didn't want to lie to my patients. So, but I was a criminal because chronic pain or any pain that radiates, which I suffer from and millions of Americans suffer from, wasn't on the bill at that time. So I had to personally fight for it. You know what? I had to fight for it and lobby, and we were successful. Now peripheral neuropathy, as of last year, is on the records, is on the books. So I am no longer a criminal.
Mm-hmm. So do you and other physicians worry about over-prescribing, if you will, if people getting hooked on whatever?
On cannabis?
Whatever.
No such thing.
Don't get hooked.
There's no such thing as addiction or to cannabis. Cannabis, since its very inception, causes 0 deaths.
Well, let's talk about opioids.
Yeah.
And so that seems to be the sexy drug. Now, how do people originally get hooked on opioids?
Well, I don't see people in my clinic, treating pain patients.
Okay.
We have to understand, and it's important that society understands the difference between physical dependence and addiction.
Okay.
Physical dependence is totally different than addiction.
Okay, explain the difference.
Okay, you can take this, how drugs are classified is by their abuse potential and their potential to cause harm. So you have a lot of narcotics, a lot of opiates that are Schedule II, high abuse potential, and they can cause death. So we know, we see it in our family members, we see it in the community how those two are happening, deaths, right?
From opioids.
From opioids.
Okay.
The leading cause of death under age of 50 is prescription opioids.
So tell me what a prescription opioid, give me a couple of examples.
It can be from your dentist, Vicodin, Tylenol number 3, OxyContin. OxyContin now just released this, the Congress put pressure on the makers of OxyContin. That's a long-acting drug, long-acting opioid that slowly releases medication over 12 hours. Now they can't advertise to doctors anymore. That's just recent. There's Opana, there's oxycodone, there's Percocet, there's Vicodin, there's Dilaudid,
all right.
fentanyl.
A physician prescribes one of those that you just mentioned. I go home and take them
as well.
For a couple of days, and then what happens?
Well, you get better, but there's no get better for a large percentage of. We have 333 million Americans. 100 million Americans suffer from
But how do
chronic
you? What
pain.
I'm asking you is, how do you go from, let's say, a woman has a surgery or a man, and you come home and you take it for the 2 or 3 days or a week, and then what happens? How do you go from that to becoming dependent on it?
Well,
Because I had heard or read that it traced back to, for example, plastic surgery.
That's true. That's true. That caused some of the epidemic is there's 4 or 5 or maybe 10 pills left over that woman or man that's recovering from plastic surgery does not need, right? And they leave that unlocked, unmanned in that medicine cabinet. And you have teenagers and kids taking these medications from their parents, and they have these things called Skittle parties. They throw it on the table, and you thinking your little kid's having a sleepover, having a good time, a box of pizza. No, they're abusing medication that's left over, that's not been locked or not been discarded or not been destroyed properly. And that was a big reason, a big catalyst to this whole crisis.
Okay, hold that point, and we're going to be right back because I got a couple more very pertinent questions to ask you about opioids.
Okay, let's do it.
We'll be right back with Dr. Rashawn Hodge. All right, we're talking with Dr. Rashawn Hodge about medical or medicinal cannabis and opioids, heroin, and whatever else you want to call it. But we did not talk about addiction, and you made a distinction. So let's talk about addiction for a moment.
Okay. Then it made me drive home my point.
Okay.
You know, I'm a pain specialist. So in my practice, 99% of chronic pain patients are physically dependent on the medication, not addicted. Addicted is, you know, there's emotional, there's a physical, there's mental components to it, you know, and that's different type of counseling. Addiction will break up your home. You can't work. You know, you're homeless, you can't pay bills. You're doing all types of risky behavior, you know. Your only hope is to get to that pill. You live and breathe to score, to get that medication or to get high, you know. That is your sole purpose, and that's addiction.
Okay. What's the answer? I mean, you deal with it. You take for your own personal use.
I don't.
So what's the?
I just use medicinal cannabis. I have used opioids, and I have used to treat my pain, which has been prescribed to me. That's the knee-jerk reaction as a physician. You know, if a patient comes in with pain, and they're telling you, hey, I suffer day in, day out. Commissioner, there is no feel better for me, you know? It's no Z-Pack.
So you're actually living in constant pain
I
yourself.
live in pain, intractable pain myself. So cannabis, you know, reduces my pain symptoms so I don't even have to use opioids. And I'm not the only one. Look at nationwide, you know, they had the data for all medicinal cannabis states, there's a 25% reduction in opioid deaths. Even in New Mexico, that's one of the states that have been hit hardest by the opioid crisis. Patients that have access to medicinal cannabis are 17 times more likely to stop using all opioids. So I'm telling you, that's my story. But look at New Mexico, they have all this data, all these subjects that once they had access to it, they didn't need the pills anymore.
So if that's true, why then are we still behind the times, so to speak?
Because we're behind the times, so to speak.
But if the data suggests that this is not something that's bad, it's something that's helpful, it's going to be a good thing for most people, and you said that the statistics show that most Georgians favor it,
right?
But the legislators are saying no, still saying no.
Well,
including the governor recently.
Yeah, yes, that's the government. That's the government's still saying it's a Schedule I drug. So the states have every right to interpret federal law, and that's what Georgia did. We interpreted federal law and said, hey, you know what? Even though it's federally illegal, Georgia, we can interpret that, and we made it a medicinal cannabis oil-only state without access. But for local and state government to truly help Georgians is to actually start cultivating medical marijuana. I mean, from a seed to a flower to distribution to true access. I'm talking dispensaries. Now, once we have dispensaries, now we all can get help. And with dispensaries, it's safer. There's laboratory control, so there's regulations. So that medicine we know is true medicine. There's no pesticides in it. It's really going to help you.
So what do you see as the future for Georgia?
To pass these bills and we start growing medical cannabis, we start cultivating medical marijuana just for medicinal purposes only.
What's the likelihood of that happening and when?
Well, I don't know where the bills are currently, but I know crossover date is in March.
Soon, yeah.
Soon, yeah. So, when the Senate looks at it and the House of Representatives looks at these two bills, hopefully there's enough votes. And then by May 22nd, hopefully that is coupled to our ballot. The gubernatorial primary election is November 2018, right? So the primaries are in May.
May
so
22nd.
Hopefully there'll be one line, who we're going to vote for governor. And the second line is, do you agree with in-state cultivation of medical marijuana for medicinal purposes only. And I hope all 11 million Georgians vote yes. It's my job for them to vote yes.
My friend, that's it for today. We have to bring you back. There's a state legislator who's really involved in this, Park Cannon. She's pushing some legislation. We're going to have you two together and maybe get you back on the show at the same time.
I would love to, man. Thanks for having me on the show, man.
You my
I
man.
appreciate you, my man. All right.
We'll be right back to wrap up the show after this message and get your thoughts. Stay with us. Well, as we wrap up today's show, I have a few thoughts on what we've talked about today. It's a serious issue. I know Dr. Hodge. I've known him. I appreciate and respect the work that he's doing. But the reality of it is, though, no matter how important this topic is, unless we can convince those legislators that this is the right thing to do, we'll probably be sitting here again next year talking about the same topic. But we are making progress. And thanks to people like Dr. Hodge and others, we will get there because it's the right thing to do. So, those are my thoughts. What are yours? Connect with me online to let me know what you think. We'll share your thoughts on a future show. Well, that's our time for today. Thanks for spending this time with us, and we'll see you next time on the Chairman's Circle.